My name's Lauren. I'm 29, and I work as a graphic designer in Chicago. Most days I spend 10 or 12 hours staring at screens, bouncing between client calls, revisions, and the same 4 walls of my apartment. It's not a bad job, but the city never really goes quiet. Even at night, there's always someone yelling outside, sirens echoing, or my upstairs neighbor dropping something heavy at 2 a.m. By the time February rolled around, I was completely burned out, so I decided to take a weekend off, somewhere quiet, cheap, and far enough away that my phone signal wouldn't follow me. I found this small Airbnb cabin a few hours north, tucked near a frozen lake and surrounded by woods. It looked perfect. Just me, coffee, a stack of books, and silence. The owner left the key in a lockbox, so I never met them in person. I got there just before sunset. That golden light that makes everything look peaceful. The cabin smelled like cedar and old books. I unpacked, made a cup of coffee, and sat outside on the porch to breathe in the quiet. For a while, it was exactly what I needed. Then, just as the sky turned dark, I noticed something in the tree line. Movement, maybe 50 feet away. It was faint, like someone walking between the trees. I told myself it was probably a deer or something. But the feeling that I wasn't alone stuck with me. That night, the silence was heavier than I expected. You don't realize how loud nature can be until you're out there with no traffic, no hum of the city. Every creak of the cabin made me tense up. Around midnight, I woke up to this rhythmic tapping sound, like sticks hitting wood. It wasn't close, but it wasn't far either. I tried to ignore it, told myself it was branches moving in the wind, and somehow fell back asleep. The next morning, I went out to explore the area. Behind the cabin was a narrow path leading into the woods. It looked like a hiking trail, but the snow was disturbed. Fresh footprints, maybe 2 or 3 sets. They didn't look like mine. They led off deeper into the woods and then vanished where the ground turned icy. Later that afternoon, I sat on the porch again, watching the lake freeze over. That's when I noticed it. Between 2 trees at the edge of the woods, there was someone standing there, completely still. At first, I thought it was just a dark stump or maybe a shadow, but then I saw movement, the slightest tilt of a head. They were watching the cabin. I froze. It lasted maybe 10 seconds before I blinked, and the figure was gone. No footsteps, no noise, nothing. I went inside, locked the door, and tried to convince myself it was just my imagination. Still, I couldn't shake the thought that someone had been out there, staring. That night, I left a light on in the kitchen. I barely slept. Every sound from outside made me sit up and listen. Around 3 a.m., I heard what sounded like crunching in the snow. Slow, deliberate steps circling the cabin. Then came this faint scraping sound, like someone dragging a stick along the wall outside. It moved from one side of the cabin to the other. I sat there frozen, holding my breath. The scraping stopped right outside the bedroom window. I didn't dare move. After a few minutes, I finally looked toward the window. The curtains were slightly open, and through the small gap, I saw a pale shape. A face. Someone was standing right there, looking in. I scrambled out of bed and grabbed my phone, but by the time I turned the flashlight on, the face was gone. I checked the door, still locked. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. Eventually, exhaustion must have taken over, because I woke up hours later to daylight creeping through the blinds. When I stepped outside, the snow around the cabin was a mess of footprints. They circled the entire place, stopping by every window. I followed them to the tree line. About 30 feet away, there was an old shed I hadn't noticed before. The door was slightly open. Inside were empty beer cans, a blanket, and a pair of muddy boots. Whoever had been watching me had probably been sleeping out there, watching the cabin, watching me. I packed my things as fast as I could and got in my car. As I drove down the long, icy road that led away from the property, I glanced in the rearview mirror. At the edge of the woods, near the shed, stood a man, still, watching. I never went back to that cabin. I sent a message to the Airbnb owner explaining what had happened. They said no one else had ever reported anything like that, but that they'd look into it. I deleted my Airbnb account that same week. Since then, I can't look at a quiet forest the same way. Even now, when I drive past a cabin or see a trail disappearing into the trees, I can't help but wonder if someone's out there, standing just beyond the line of sight, waiting for someone like me to show up again.